Welcome, everyone, to this next episode of Coffee with Sales Engineers. Today is an exciting day to be talking to Brian Rossi. He's got an amazing journey into sales engineering, and Brian's got thoughts on use of AI in sales engineering and in general. And I've been taking some AI courses, so it's on top of my mind too, Brian. I've got lots of interesting questions to ask you. But before we get into that, give us a quick introduction about yourself and your journey into sales engineering.
Sure. Thank you, Sachin. So I am married. I have a 20-year-old son. We have 3 cats and 4 chickens. We used to have 6. I won't go into details of what happened to the other 2, but that's a little bit on my personal side. With regards to my career journey, right out of high school, what I would say is my first job was working at McDonald's. And as McDonald's, not so much the same these days, but previously back in my day, there was a lot of work to do at McDonald's, and it was very high stress, very high pressure, lots of policies and procedures that you had to follow. It's teaching me a lot of really good life skills that would eventually, as I know now, carry forward to my future career endeavors. And one of the things that piqued my interest when I was at McDonald's was we decided to do a register upgrade project. So it was a very manual kind of analog register system. That's how old I am. And we decided to do an upgrade to the registers to a more digital computer server driven kind of an architecture. And I had always tinkered at home with building PCs, and I remember the IDE cables and the motherboards and swapping in the memory chips and everything. Mm-hmm. So that intrigued me.
Now you're aging yourself.
Okay, I had a Commodore 64 as my first computer.
There you go.
When that project was announced, I was like, this sounds really cool, like really interesting. Yeah. Forget about serving fries. I want to set these registers up and understand the under the cover workings of how it all worked and stuff. So my store allowed me to be part of the project or the installation of the registers. After experiencing that and learning some of the technologies that were being used, I started thinking in my head, and I don't know about you, Sachin, but sometimes I come up with ideas and it's like, I should have patented that like the second I thought of it, because at this time, this was also the age where in order to update or change the menus for the drive-through system, you had to go out and change little cards that slid in, or you had to change little tiles for prices and stuff. Yeah. I had actually thought when we did this project, like it would be amazing if we could have like screens out on the drive-through where you could just digitally update the content. And now pretty much every fast food chain you go to has that deployed.
Yeah.
I should have. Same thing with credit card readers on gas pumps. I don't know. It's just, but so my journey started at McDonald's, as I said, and I realized then that I really, as much as I love cooking and love food, I realized I liked helping customers, and I also really enjoyed technology. And so from there, I started to try and just pursue jobs that would get me a foot in the door of tech companies, maybe startups. And so I just worked my way up through some smaller companies doing customer service hotlines. Back in the day, QBasic was actually like one of the platforms that people were writing software in. Mm-hmm. And we would like literally send customers EXE files to update and patch software. And that kind of got me used to trying to troubleshoot things and figure out how to help a customer solve their problems without actually being able to have hands on the keyboard and being right there with them. I started to get into PC break fix kind of stuff. So I was laptops, desktops. Believe it or not, towers were still under people's desks when I was doing this. Yeah. And I realized I really loved doing that kind of stuff because it was my passion. I was tinkering with technology, tinkering with computers. And from there, I got into working I went to IBM and I was doing break fix support there. And at one point, someone from the sales organization came to me and said, in this office, we want to build and create a customer demo facility where customers can come in and do proof of technologies of the various software that IBM sold. And I was like, okay, so why are you coming to me? And they're like, we want you to run it and we want you to help build it. And so essentially what we did was there was a specific area in the building that was in a raised floor lab kind of environment, ventilation through the floor, all the cabling and power was under the floor. And one day, pallets and pallets of server equipment showed up in this space. And I got a phone call, and the person on the other end of the phone was like, "You should have received a pretty significant delivery. I'd like you to start setting things up as soon as you can." And I'm like, okay, changing hard drives and memory chips in a computer when I was a kid is completely different from knowing how to rack and stack a server room and work with UPSs and get all the proper electrical in there. And but long story short, that eventually became the first of its kind cloud computing at the time, before cloud computing was even like a buzzword or an entire industry in and of itself. And essentially, we basically would host ESX servers so that you could virtualize all these environments that customers could come in and play around with. And what we would do is we had a facility that was built really nice. It had a nice dining area for customers. It had different rooms that the customers could meet in that were set up like training rooms with high definition video equipment and big screens. And essentially proctors would come in from the different software brands and talk to 30 customers at a time maybe, and essentially they would work through labs to understand how the software works and what business problems those software products would help solve. And so I started getting into this, and I found myself actually enjoying talking with the customers more than tinkering with the tech behind the scenes. And so I started mingling with people, and a couple of years of doing this, the director of sales for the place that I worked at, the facility I worked in, that entire region, he came to me and he said, "Have you ever thought of doing something different for your career?" And I was like, I guess sometimes I do. And he's like, "Have you ever thought of trying sales?" And immediately when I hear sales, I just think of like the used car salesman. Like, I don't want to do that. I'm honest, I'm transparent. And those seemed like oxymorons to sales in my head at the time.
Telling this to the director of sales, right?
I've learned in my career to take every opportunity as an opportunity and to just let it play out, see what they have to say before I share any of my honest feelings or thoughts. So long story short, this guy actually offered to mentor me. And I've talked to all of my sales managers and they all love working with you. They get along with you very well. They say you know your stuff. So here's what I want to do. I want to give you an opportunity to do some mock job interviews. And I want you to just pick any product of IBM's and come and do a presentation to us as though you were trying to get us to buy the software. And make sure that you work on figuring out why it's going to be valuable to us and what types of problems it's going to help solve. And let's just see how that goes. We had come out with a brand new product that didn't even exist yet for customers. And we had another center in our building, and it had an entire server stack of an app server where you could basically come in. It had all the networking, storage, server power, virtualization, everything you need to basically get an app and running within 45 minutes. And so I went over to this center and I said, "Can you guys give me like a debrief of this offering? Because it's not even technically out in the market yet." And so that's what I did my presentation on, because I was like, I want to differentiate myself to these people. And what better way to do it than to pitch a product that they don't even know exists yet?
Nice.
And I was able to explain, just take, for example, when we set these events up for customers, it takes me hours and hours to get all of this stuff set up and configured for you. What if I told you I could give you the ability to do that within less than an hour and you're ready to go right out of the gate? And they were like, "Oh, that sounds really interesting." So that's how my journey started. And then
you did your first demo without knowing what sales engineering was. I guess you had friends, but you had never done this before.
Correct.
And it was self-taught. Like you just figured it out and went and pitched it.
I've always been a big proponent of self-education and taking advantage of resources that are out there for you and not depending on somebody else to come alongside and say, you should do these 5 things to become a successful sales engineer. Go out and do some research. Back then, there wasn't as much information out there on the internet as there is now, but there was still some. And I talked to some of the people that I had been working with that were in that role already to get a little bit of an idea of some of the things I should focus on. So I vetted my ideas with them, and I used all that feedback to build what I thought was a very compelling presentation and demo for them. And it did resonate extremely well.
So if this director of sales hadn't come to you, obviously he's got SC team already.
That is a very safe statement.
Right? Yes. But for many of us, we happen to be in the right place at the right time with the opportunity, but it was our technical curiosity and desire to challenge the status quo and try something new that got us in. And since then, you became an SE officially. What's been the journey since then?
Okay, so my first, I'm sure most companies do this, but when you become an SE, obviously there's ramping up that you have to do. You have to understand the product set. You have to understand what types of customers you're selling to and what their industries look like and the different pain points of those industries. So a lot of, at least bigger companies, typically do some kind of a sales kickoff every year where everybody kind of flies into a common place, and it's just a lot of product roadmap discussions and let's go get them. And for me, that first conference that I went to, I remember this like it just happened 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
We were in a huge hotel in Atlanta, Georgia somewhere, and I was sitting up in my room. Now, before this, I did not even own a suit. And so part of this job was I went out and I bought 3 of the best suits I could find. Because back then it was like you wore suits all the time. So I went up to my room and I'm pressing all the suits to get any of the wrinkles out and everything. And it's almost time to go downstairs to start the conference out. So I step out of my room and I look down at this sea of suits and dresses. And it's just, I definitely don't belong here.
Yeah.
And so I went back into my room and I actually called my wife. I was on the verge of tears because I really feel like I made the wrong decision here to completely upend what I thought was a successful career and do something like this where I am like a fish out of water. My wife is amazing. She's extremely encouraging, and this is going to be good, Brian. You just got to put your best foot forward. And so I went down and I got with the manager that hired me, and I'm like, can you do me a favor and introduce me to some people just so I feel like I know somebody other than you? And he basically brought me around and introduced me to everything from VPs to directors to other SEs to sales reps, even to business partners. And so very quickly, I started to understand how this job and this industry feels and looks. And from there, I started going to trade shows and doing podium type presentations at those trade shows. And next thing I knew, I was sitting in the offices of C-level executives of some of the biggest brands in the world that we all know and love, and talking to them about how I could bring them potentially a solution that could help solve their problems. Talk about a mind-blowing moment of looking at how I went from serving French fries at McDonald's to being able to talk to one of the top companies in the world and a C-level executive nonetheless about how I can help solve their business problems. So it's been a really awesome journey. And I would say one of the most rewarding parts of my journey has been my opportunity to be able to help develop and mentor other people in this role as well. I feel like when so much has been given to me, why would I not try to give some of that back, if not all of it back to the community of up and coming SEs? And so one of the things I was able to do while I was at IBM is work with a lot of the college graduates that are just coming out of college with their degrees, and being able to bring them in and take the knowledge and education of the space, the customers, the products that I've learned, and just be able to pour that into them.
Yeah.
Obviously, some of them don't work out. Other ones, they're huge successes. And I don't know about you, but for me, when I pour my time and my blood, sweat, and tears into helping somebody else or something else succeed, the the greatest payoff and reward that you can have is actually seeing them be completely successful on their own. So really awesome seeing people have their own completely successful careers where I'm not even attached to them anymore. They're just doing it all on their own. So
and you're doing that right now, Brian. Hopefully somebody who's maybe flipping burgers, maybe doing something where they have not thought about sales engineering. Maybe they have the same thoughts about, oh, when I think sales, I think dishonesty, I think pressure, I think suits and fake and not real. And but they should know that there's the other side of bringing solution to C-level executives of big brands that need to understand what this technology can do for them and why they should invest in it. And other than a salesperson, sales engineer is the more technically knowledgeable to help them understand it.
correct. Yeah. If you think about it in our everyday life, there's just certain products that we've bought because it solves a problem that we're experiencing. For someone that's just starting out, what I would say is, yes, you do have to have a lot of technical expertise and knowledge as you build your career. But at the end of the day, whether it's the biggest brand in the world or it's like me and you're just trying to help somebody solve a problem. Your job is to understand what their problem is, figure out how what you're going to propose to them can actually help solve their problem. And it's even better if you can tie that to actual value points. This is going to help increase your revenue by blah, blah, blah. This is going to help reduce the effort to do blah, blah. You're really just problem solving. If you just pull back all the fear and the anticipation of what this is going to be like, you're just solving problems.
It's human to human interaction. The individual you're speaking to, it has a purpose, a motivation, a role that they are. The reason they're talking to you is because they're trying to figure out how to grow their company, how to grow whatever they're doing. And as long as you can connect your solution to that, because you fell into it and the director of sales reached out to you. I'm sure there were other technicians working in that lab that didn't get approached because they found there was something about you, that the relationship that you had built with other sales managers and sales reps.
Being in the sales engineering role, one of the things that I started developing a reputation for was being the term that people use in my current employ is the Wizard of Oz, or the man behind the curtain. And so a lot of what I do today is very much in support of fellow sales engineers. And it involves things like proof of concepts, which are basically, for those that aren't familiar with the term, it's the customer asks, can you do XYZ? And maybe your product or solution can't currently do XYZ, but you're willing to put in an effort to try and see if you can get it to do XYZ. That's basically a proof of concept.
It's your IBM lab, customers walking into a physical room to test it for themselves.
Absolutely.
It's letting them touch and feel the solution before they buy it.
And so part of what I do now is I still work in the sales engineering org, but I would say I'm what we call customer zero. So when we do a release of our software, I'm usually one of the first people to actually deploy and install it, because I also build and maintain our demo environments that we use to do the software demos for customers. Being customer zero and being the Wizard of Oz and being able to understand the bones of the product at the deepest level, I get to interact a lot with the development team, because you could call me a chief bug officer maybe, but finding things that need to change about the software code and communicating that directly to developers, or even ideating on ways to make some of our functionalities, features and functions even better than they are currently. That allows me to communicate with a lot of our product management folks. So I've gotten the opportunity to actually work with product management to do design reviews of up and coming enhancements that they're working on. In another thing I'll say about the sales engineering role is it's super important, because you're also going to be the voice of the customer and the market back into the product management chain. And so them understanding what the trends are and what people are looking to have for features and functions very often is going to come from you.
Yeah.
And filtering that back up to them is going to help them with the roadmap of the product to understand what to work on.
I love the concept of customer zero. The cost of that bug that you're finding is way more expensive when customer one or customer 15 finds it.
Yep. Yep.
The implications of that bug is a lot bigger.
Yeah.
And also there's a level of trust relationship that goes along that sales engineers can build with product management. We can speak that language that product management understands. Whereas in a lot of companies, when those bridges don't exist, usually it's the CRO or the biggest enterprise sales rep who's working on the biggest opportunity for the quarter. They are walking into this meeting with product leadership saying, we must have this feature by end of December because that's the only way we're going to close this deal. And
Right.
now
Yep.
the language is completely broken because that sales rep is not talking about what features they need, how it's going to help the rest of the customer base. They're talking about what is needed to close a deal. Product leadership doesn't understand because they've never closed a deal, right? Identify that there are bridges between sales engineering, not necessarily sales, but sales engineering and product management and marketing and product marketing and partner marketing and channel. Those bridges can be very meaningful. I think it's empowering, right? I feel you probably could step into more of a sales engineering position because you've done that before. You've been in front of customers, but it sounds like you feel empowered by empowering others to do their job better.
Absolutely. That is my passion, I would say.
So
It's speaking of marketing too. It's also been an opportunity for me to, as you can tell, I have a little bit of a vibe going here.
yes, I
But
like that.
it gives me an opportunity to also take advantage of some of my personal passions as far as being a creative, whether it's audio or video editing. It gives me the ability to actually apply those practices as well in a marketing context at my employer in the way of creating content. And that's content for social media, content for my YouTube channel. But it gives me the ability to maybe do like feature release videos so the customers understand like what the new features and functions are and how it's going to be valuable and beneficial to them. So I enjoy that part of it.
I love that creative element. I think that creative element of sales engineering is going to be even more heightened and more prominent as we move into this AI first and AI prominent world. So let's get into that topic because obviously you are in a role where you're looking at process, you're looking at operations, you're looking at how these demo environments are working, you're looking at how the sales teams are using the environment, how the product code and all of that. And I think you mentioned you're an AI enthusiast as well. Tell us a little bit about what's your point of view on how it's going to change sales engineering or in general, the way we sell, the way we buy.
I am not a robot. And I am not.
All right, Chat GPT, replace this video with a real robot.
No, so what I would say is from day one of dabbling with AI, and for me, it was ChatGPT. And anybody that was involved in tech at the time, if they hadn't heard about it, they lived under a rock. I started looking at this thing and I'm like, holy mackerel, this thing is amazing. Like I can just talk to it like I'm talking to you right now, Sachin. And like I could even tell it to act like you if I knew your mannerisms and it would respond with similar replies. And I was like, this is crazy. And then I started seeing some videos about how it could like write code, like basic code. So I would try to do little HTML, CSS, like mock-ups of things. And it wasn't great, to be totally honest with you. So I know the fear is that this is going to get rid of all of our jobs and replace us. And we're just going to be sitting home drinking coffee that we didn't even make, like a robot made it for us. And let's hope they didn't poison us. And then they're going to be doing all the work. The way I like to view at least the tools that I dabble in with AI, I like to view it as an augmentation to my creativity and the work that I do. For example, let's say we've been talking as a SE team, like it would be really cool if we could show this on a front end to a customer. And I'm not going to mention specific solutions here, but let's say we could do that. How would that look? Like, what do we think it would be like? So that gives someone like me that's a creative the ability to ideate on different things and say, I think I'd put this here, put that there, put this over here. And in the past, for me, I'm very much an ideas guy, and I shared with you earlier today that I would have loved to have patented ideas like digital screens for fast food restaurants when I was at McDonald's, because they didn't exist back then, or credit card readers on gas pumps. But I'm an ideas guy. I can't build anything. I need somebody else to build for me. And so when you're talking about software, that's obviously code, and you need to have front end and back end developers and UI and UX developers as well. But now with AI, I can have an idea and I can converse with AI in a way that I would converse with if I had a back end developer over here and a front end developer over here. I can be like, hey, can you code this for me so that it looks like such and such? And we need to make sure that the API on the back end is able to return the data that it needs. I can converse in just normal English language to an AI model what I'm looking to do. And in relatively quick time, it's able to give me examples of what that might look like or how I might go about implementing something like that, down to being able to actually code the code needed for that. And then they release their multimodal capability where now you can give it images or audio files, not just text. And so I don't know if you remember, but when they did a release video, the guy like sketched a website design on a napkin and took a picture of it and said, create this website. And it spit that out.
Yeah.
There are now lots of solutions out there that give you the ability to give it a prompt, and that prompt could be anything that you want it to be. Now, what I'll say about using AI where you're using prompts is coming up with prompts that are going to interact with the AI models the way you need them to. You need to put some time and effort into learning prompt engineering techniques and even understanding how that particular AI offering, the model that it's using, how best you can optimize your prompts to work with that and give you what you need. But you can literally come to something and paste in your prompt, and you'll just see it start generating code. You can tell it that you want to build this app using mock data, and it will actually create JSON files and store it in a mock data folder and reference it in the code. And then on the other side of the screen where the code is being written, you can literally see this thing being developed in a visual way right in front of your face. And so for me, coming up with these proofs of concepts and being able to take feedback from my fellow SEs, I can now create stuff that we can actually show as an art of the possible kind of a scenario. Whereas before, it would have had to have just been like mock-ups that I did in Photoshop or Illustrator or any of the graphic design apps or even Figma. But now I can actually have functional code that does something that I could now hand to a developer. I'm sure they'd look at it and be like, this isn't perfect code, but it's a start. And I don't know if it removes half of the equation from the equation, but it gives them a head start. And again, it's augmenting my creativity because I'm now able to push my ideas further than I would be able to with just a visual mock-up. And so I find that to be one of the really cool use cases. I think
if it makes all of us more focused on the creative, the solution, the thinking, which are all human things, that only serves better. And I feel like a lot of people confuse AI with AGI. I think the AGI is where we're still way, way far from that. And when we get there, I think we will need to worry about what that does. But AI is very purpose focused. What do you need AI to do for your POCs? And it's literally going to just do that. Those models are not going to automatically shift and start making your coffee.
They get
I feel like
code
it's
language.
just like what we're used to. We're used to code, and we're like, okay, if I'm going to write this program to generate a website, it's going to write a program to generate a website. I feel AI is just that. It's just better, faster, smarter with the neural networks and has some intelligence into it. And I know there's companies that are coming out in sales engineering that are helping automate some aspects of sales engineering that I bet most SCs would look at that and say, yeah, that's the shitty part of my job. Please automate it.
I was just going to say too, is that even something simple like ChatGPT, you now have the ability to create custom GPTs. So you can create
Right.
your own GPT, and you could train that or use the RAG model where you're basically providing it data to give it its knowledge. And then you can now converse with it in a way that draw from that knowledge that you've given it. And again, this comes down to good prompt engineering, but you
Yeah.
could potentially create like a customer GPT for your sales job. And you could give it traits like characteristics like there's an architect part of you that is
Mhm.
always concerned about the software architecture and you don't want people to touch your architecture because it's your baby. Or you could have the CEO. So you could give this model
Personas. Yeah.
different roles and personas, and then you could just use it to simulate a sales meeting. So this could be even helpful for beginners
Yeah.
where you don't have a lot of experience. You can create something like this fairly easily and quickly and have a mock presentation where you come in and you can even paste slides into it with pictures of architecture diagrams, and it will then use the knowledge of the personas that you've given it to answer questions back or maybe challenge something that you're proposing. And that's all super helpful, and it will help train you. And one thing I find really important to remember too about all this stuff is right now, as you said, maybe the future is going to be different, but right now, anything and everything that's being pumped into these things, who's pumping it into these things? We are.
Mhm.
So I still run into occasions where I'll ask these different services a question and it doesn't know the answer. And it's like, why doesn't it know the answer? It doesn't know the
Somebody's
answer because no one's told it the answer.
right. Right.
So again, it's
Yeah.
very much dependent on what we put into it. And obviously there's going to be some bad players out there, but I feel like as long as we're responsible about what we're pumping into it
Yeah.
and we're using it for worthy purposes, I don't think we really have much to worry about
Yeah.
until somebody decides to say, hey, this could replace humans.
I think I would love to host you back, bring you back on maybe if we're still doing the podcast next year. It'll be really interesting to listen to this, kind of what we're talking about today, and then even a year from now to see how far we have come. So I think the speed of
Yeah, yeah.
innovation, the
Oh, the
speed of
speed.
adoption, it's ridiculous.
The speed is crazy. Even if you think about when the first iPhone came out on the market,
Yeah.
now they're releasing new versions of the iPhone like super, super frequent.
Yeah.
And the technological enhancements in each release of the phone is exponentially better than the one before it.
Right.
And except for when they removed the regular headphone jacks off the phone. I still don't understand why they did that. But same thing with this space. My passions are creative things like video editing, sound stuff. The ability for me to be able to take 60 seconds of my voice, clone it, and then be able to use it to create voiceovers for videos where I don't even have to come in and do a live voiceover like this. I can if I want,
Yeah.
but sometimes I don't want to, and I want to be able to drop audio clips in a video wherever I want. I can do that fairly easily. It's $5 a month for a service that I use to do that. So being able to do stuff like that, or even being able to take videos of things and change things about the video, or take the audio of the video and have it translated into another language like fairly
Yeah.
easily and quickly is just like mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing stuff. This has been so amazing to
Yeah.
hear your thoughts, to share your journey into sales engineering. I know I've been looking for more unique and extreme cases of teachers becoming sales engineers and theater people becoming sales engineers, baker becoming sales engineers. You, my friend, are adding to that list of McDonald flipping burgers to sales engineering journey. So thank you for sharing that. It's been so great to connect with you. I hope to bring you back in the near future so we can continue our AI discussion. Thank you
Yes.
so much, Ryan, for being on the podcast, and have a great rest of the day, man.
Thank you for having me, and you as well.